Okay, so it's kind of a pain, but so I made part one, which apparently the sound wasn't working, and then part two and the sound wasn't working. I posted both of them, and then right after post number two, I realized the sound wasn't working, and then I looked into it. I mean, this was all enabled, but there was an update, and for some reason the sound was kicked off the list. So now I come to the dilemma of, do I remake both those videos from scratch, or do we just kind of go over what is done, right? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's better. I mean, going over is a little quicker, I think. So, and by all means, throw comments in to the video to see which kind of a better method is. But for now, I think we'll just kind of go over how we got. I'll even show you kind of where we're at first, right? So I can click and drag it to there. I can drag this one here, and when I'm done, the AI travel together, and they hit and they break. So the way I got here is, first of all, we have a ground, and this ground is just the background. Now it has navigation baked into it. If you don't know how to do that, just to be on the safe side for you, mark it as static. Go over to this navigation window. If you don't have this, go up to Windows AI Navigation. This will pop up. Now, this needs to be marked static. Once it's static, you can just hit bake. It does its bake. In this case, it's very quick. It's just a small little square, right? So now it's baked. So the AI can now see things, paths. So that's the ground. Now, secondly, is tag. So I made a layer called POI, so point of interest. And that's everything that the Raycast is going to see that we're going to be using to build everything with. So all four of these markers are on this point of interest. So they can all be seen. Now the difference here is start red and start blue have a tag blue, red. The ends have end red and blue. So you can go to tags, add tags, and just add all the tags you want. Layers, we have limits, right? That's how many layers there are, and you can't go beyond that. But tags, there is no limit to tags. You can make all sorts of tags. So we have the base ground set up. We have these things, they're all in the layer, they got the proper tags. They contain no logic to them, right? And these things themselves are just a flat box. And you can use anything, as long as they have a collider. Then, like, if you want to use a circle or whatever, it really doesn't matter. They're just kind of markers. But they have a collider, and that's important. All right, so that's the ground. Now, the cars we'll get into after, so I'll deactivate those for now. So in the manager, we have a few different things here. So we have a position manager, or the position, and all I do here is a mouse picking. Every frame, and it's going to the default layer, right? And I could change that to like some sort of ground layer, right? So I'm going 100 distance, and I'm only going to hit the default, and I'm going to store the position every frame. And as you see, if I go to the camera, it's sitting up here. So we're going to be raycasting from up here down. And we're only going to hit the default layer, which happens to be our ground. So we're going to raycast to our ground. We don't care about anything else in here. We're just raycasting to the ground. That's all we're doing. Okay, now the camera, I have it set to orthographic. It's more of a however you want to do it preference-wise. Like if you want to be perspective, let's move it down a bit, but it would work just fine. There's literally absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's all preference on how you want to set it up. If you want to go orthographic or non-orthographic, entirely up to you. So the one thing I am trying to make sure of, though, is that this is all covered by the ground. And if need be, I mean, you could take the ground and just go stupid big with it. Now I totally messed that up, but whatever. Right? And now it's a little broader field, so the camera's not just barely covering it. It's So anyway, so that's literally all this FSM does, is he's just mouse picking and constantly getting the position. That's all he does. The manager, however, these things are kind of broken into two sections, right? So this one just wants to function on get mouse button down. So if we get a mouse button down, we're going to go over here. And this system here is kind of based on the cars. So ideally, if the cars are going to move eventually, while they're moving, we don't want to be drawing the path, right? We want to draw the path. When the paths are complete, the cars can then move. But when the cars are moving, we don't want to have to redraw the path because it's going to screw things up. So what this is I've put a bool on these cars. And when they start moving, it turns true. When they stop, it turns false. So we click, and I'm using get FSM bool to these cars. Car is moving, even though it looks like Carl's moving. And I'm getting both cars. And then I'm using a bool multi-condition, which is on the ecosystem. Conditions 2, so blue car is moving, red car is moving, values are true. If that's good, if this is true, so if both of these are true, then we can go back over here. Because if they're moving, we don't want to do anything. Right? Actually, I almost don't even need to use bool multi-condition for this. You could use if any are true. That might actually almost be a better... whatever. Not a big deal right now. So, if this is false, though, so if the cars aren't moving, it's going to do a fail event. Which, in our case, is good. So, okay, well, if the cars aren't moving, let's go over here. So we're going to do another mouse pick, but this one's not every frame. But this time we're going to do the layer mask of point of interest. So this mouse pick can only see these 4 blocks. They can't see the AI, they can't see the ground. It's going to see the 4 blocks, and that's it. It's going to now store the mouse pick. And we're going to get the tag of the mouse pick, and we're going to do a string switch of that tag. So if the tag is blue, we're going to go this way. If the tag is red, we're going to go this way. If it is neither of those, that's why I have the next frame in here, we're just going to go back over here. Right? So tag blue, tag red. So I have to then start with these. Tag blue, tag red, right? So I have to start with clicking on those. Like if I click over here or on those, it doesn't matter. I have to click on these things for this logic to start. All right, which is why these things have a different tag, and red. So let's say we click on red. So we click on, oh, okay, let's say blue because he's up top. So we're going to click on blue. So we clicked on this guy. We get his tag. We do a string switch. We come up here. We now set bool, the bool path, which is another bool, which we haven't seen yet, but we're going to set this as false. And this is important. It doesn't do anything yet. It's just a bool called bool path. But whatever this thing is, we're going to set it to false. Next, we're going to tell these cars, or tell in specific the blue car, not the red car, because we're on the blue path. We're going to tell the blue car to start. Okay. Now let's just pause this logic and look at what that means. So now this is kind of one of the tricky things though. Up here, see how I'm sending it to the blue car and I'm setting an event. There's no FSM in here. Okay. So if I go send event, and I could show you this real quick. All right. If I send it to game object FSM, I can send it to whichever I want, right? And I have to choose an FSM and I can send an event. But that's not what I'm doing here. So instead of game object FSM, I'm going just to the game object itself and I'm going to send an event, and that's what I'm doing. So what that will do for us is this start new actually goes to all of its all of the FSMs on the blue car. So if I go to the blue car, it has a nav mesh agent so we can move. It has a collider so that it can collide with the other car. It has a rigid body so we can explode it, which is currently set to is kinematic, gravity off. We have one FSM, and this one has no events. So this one doesn't matter right now. But, oh, where is, oh, okay, no, we send it over here. Sorry. So this guy, this blue car isn't actually sending to the car. It's going to send to this logic for the blue car. Doesn't actually send it to the car, right? So he's going to send start new to this guy right here, and this is just these are just logic blocks. They don't have anything, but this is where the line renderer is. So this blue car has a line renderer. Its positions is set to 0. That's important. I made its width 0.2, and you can go anywhere you want. Like you can click on that, hit enter. I can go 0.1, 0.4, and maybe I'll show you the difference, right? So there's, let's go hit enter, we'll go 0.1, blue car can be 0.4. Now the red car has a red material, the blue car has a blue material, right? And that's just, I made a standard material, it's opaque, red, but I put on the emissions. Now if you wanted to, you could make this a unlit shader so it's not affected by light. You know, some sort of sprite shader or something. But anyway, so we have a line renderer. It has 0 positions, it has a color, and it has a width. That's all it does. Now the data holder, as you can see, this has 3 events. We have, and the start is nothing, so we have start new, right? And that's what we just sent from the manager. So I just dragged this guy over and set property. Positions count, so the number of positions, we're going to set this to 0, because if we're starting new, we want to make sure that's 0. Okay, now let's go next frame. We come over here. Now we're going to get the property of number of positions. So we're getting this, and that's going to be our line renderer length, which is going to be 0 to start off with. Next, we have this thing called array length, which we don't have anywhere in here. We just have this variable, so it's not actually doing anything. And it's comparing. And if this number, which we're not getting, but we have, is bigger than the line renderer, we need to add. And if we add, then we're going to add, so this, we're going to set this number to the same value as this array length. Secondly, we need to get the array, which is actually over in this guy. And we're going to copy the values. This is a vector3 array. Then we're going to call method, right? So if you just drag it over, you say call, you can do all sorts of different things, right? So that's kind of what we're doing there. So I'm going to call set positions, and I'm going to use the array that I just copied over. And then I'm going to come back over here and wait. And if the positions get bigger, we're going to do the same thing over again. And if we call stop, it's literally just a state with nothing in it. So it's not running this logic. If we call clear, it's going to do kind of like what this one did, right? It's going to set the positions to 0, but it doesn't transfer over, it just stops. So it's kind of like stop, but at the same time, it resets it. So let's take a little look at the array builder. And this one also has those kind of same things. So in the start, there's nothing. So when we get the start new, right, because we're starting new, so we're going to clear the array. We're going to resize the array to 0. We're going to go next frame. Now, we're going to get FSM vector 3 from this guy. So this guy here that's doing the ray casting all the time, constantly, that's all he does is just ray casts and finds the position. Doesn't do anything else. We're going to get that position each frame. We're going to get the length of our own array, which is here, which in the beginning is obviously going to be 0, so this will be 0. We're going to set the array length in this data holder, which is where this number actually comes from. See this array length? So we're using this to compare with, and we're doing stuff with it, but we don't actually get this. It doesn't actually come from anywhere. We're like, well, what the hell? Where does this number come from? But that's where it comes from. Is over here, we get the position from the manager. We get the length of our own array. We set that length into the other FSM's length of array. Now we have to minus 1 from it after we set it over. So the order of this is really crucial, right? So we get the length, we're going to send the length up. Then we're going to minus 1 from the length. And that's because if you have an array length of 1, you can't get the index of 1 because it'll give you a bad result, right? Because when you have an array, for example, say we had 5. So our length is 5. We have 5 things, but it only goes to element 4, right? Because we start at 0. So this is index 0, index 1, 2, 3, and 4. But if we use the length of the array to get the index, if the length is 1, we want 0, right? So which is why we have to minus that 1 from it. So we minus 1, and then we're going to get from the array, we're going to get it at the length. We're going to store it into a temp. All right, so now we have position and we have temp. So this temp will always be the last value in the array. I think there's even an action for that too. Then I'm going to run a vector3 operator. The position versus temp operation is going to be distance. Now here we're going to store the distance into a float, and now I'm going to float compare. This value here is an arbitrary value. If I set it to say 5, your line that you draw will be very jagged and clunky. The lower you make this value, the more smooth the line will be. So I got 0.75, I find works pretty good. So more or less, if you don't move your cursor, we are going to raycast to that position. We're going to check the distance of this position to the last distance of the array. If the distance between those 2 points is greater than 0.75, so we've moved, we want that position to now go into the array. That's kind of what it's doing. So if the position is now greater than 0.75, array add to our positions, add the position, and then just come back. Because now positions is the last point, and I'll show you kind of how that looks. Right, so if we go over here, we're in the red. So if I click, so we've entered there. Now I'm not moving the mouse, and it's just sitting there idle. It's not doing anything. It's like, okay, what are we doing? And if I start moving the mouse, if I start, once it gets beyond that 0.75, it adds it to the array. And if I start moving quick, as you can see, it starts adding a whole whack of them. Right? So that's that 0.75 is kind of like the resolution of the line. So the smaller you make that, the more little segments of the line you'll have. Right? So this guy just watches all the positions of the mouse, and it adds those positions into an array. Where this guy, the one it's talking to with the array length, it says, okay, well, if your length of vectors is greater than my length of positions, then my positions are wrong, and we need to take all of your positions and set them as my positions, and then it goes back and waits. So these two FSMs just talk back and forth. One does the positions, one places the positions into this line renderer. Right, now in this one, it also has the start, it has nothing, and stop, it has nothing, just like the other one. And this one on the clear, it does array clear, array resize. Right, and the blue and the red are identical. Right, you can make as many of those as you want, really. Right, so we set those lines differently. So if I click here, see how thin that line is? And maybe that's what you want. I don't know. And if I click here, see how much thicker the line is? It's at 0.4. Now that's obviously going to change depending on how far your camera is as well. Which actually that 0.4 looked pretty good for where I had it. I mean, I might even go like 0.6, right, for where I have my camera. Okay, so that covers these two on how they run their logic. Now under the manager, right, so that's, he sends the event to start new, and it starts that logic on one of those, which is why only one runs at a time. Next, we're going to do a get mouse button up. right? So we set blue path, which we don't know anything about yet, which is a value so far, to false. We tell our whichever card we want, because we know which one we want because we clicked on it and got the tag. We're going to send blue card to start new. Now if we let go of the mouse and we go mouse up, we're going to do another ray cast to the point of interest. We're going to get the tag again, and now we're going to compare. So if I'm on the blue, right, we're on the blue line, I need to compare if we're at N blue. So if I let go of the mouse button and we're hovering over this thing, then this is the object we're going to see, N blue. So if it's not equal, if we let go of the mouse button and we're anywhere else, doesn't matter if we can be over the red, be over the ground, whatever, then obviously it's not going to be equal. If it's not equal, we are going to send an event back to this guy saying clear. Whatever line you just made, get rid of, because it's garbage. More or less, right? Because on the clear, it's going to go here and set the positions to 0, and it sets the array to 0. Right? So it's gonna clear it out. It says nope, you let go of your left click somewhere else other than this guy. But if N blue is equal, if you did let go and the mouse is over this, we're going to set blue path to true. And we're going to send an event to the blue card just to stop. So that's the difference, clear and stop, right? So, right, because the clear clears the positions, but if we're going to stop it, we don't want this logic to run, but we don't want to clear the value. So we're just telling it to stop and sit idle. Don't do anything, right? Just stop, right? So it said the red and blue are the same. So we have clear, we have stop, and then he just goes back over here. Pretty cool, right? And this guy is for the red side. So his logic, all of this is exactly the same. It's literally copied and pasted. The only difference is this guy sends to the blue car, this guy sends to the red car. Beyond that, they are identical, right? So now you're probably wondering, what the hell is this guy, this blue path? That doesn't make any sense. We have a blue path, and over here we have a red path. And they don't do anything. They're not part of any of the logic in here, right? But we set it true if it's equal. Beyond that, it goes false. So that's where the AI come involved. So the AI, okay, so first we have a collision manager. So the collision manager just looks to see if we hit tag car. So these cars themselves are tag car. The layer I don't think actually really matters for these things, but they're tag car. So if this guy collides with tag car, we're going to, and the order of this is really important, we are going to disable this FSM, which we haven't looked at yet. We're going to tell the agent is stopped is now true. We're going to disable this agent. We are going to come down to the rigid body. We're going to turn this on, and we're going to turn this off, so we can now be in gravity. Now once we've done that, we are going to get position of whatever we hit. So we've collided with something, it's car, we've stored the hit object, we get position of hit object, now we have a hit position, we add an explosion force at hit position. Those are the force values I use, 15, 5, and 5, type impulse, and that's it. And he explodes. So far. Now up in this FSM, this one says, okay, car is moving is false. And if you remember, back up in the manager, this is where we've clicked the mouse button and we get that is moving, right? So if the cars are moving, it can't do anything. So to start off with, the car needs, okay, we're going to make sure that's false, right? Now we're going to get an FSM bool from here called blue path, and we get the red path. So that's where those two values came in that we don't do anything actually with up in here. So we're going to get those values, and we're doing another bool multi-condition. Now if both those paths are true, so we have drawn a line from point A to point B, right? So it's reached that is good kind of event. It sets that blue path value to true. And same with the red. Red does it too. So we're just making sure that we do have both paths. Both paths are true. Okay, bool multi-condition. Let's go from there. And if that's the case, then we want to go up to our red car, to our array builder that we have in here, to its positions, right, where we're getting all those vectors to build the line renderer with. We're going to take all those positions. We're going to make sure that car is moving is now true so that we can't re-click and screw things up. We're going to come down and do an array next, where we have a loop and a done. Now on the done there's nothing, but on the loop we get position of our self, and we set agent destination to this current position, which is, well, right now, because we get the array of vectors from that thing. So we're on index 0, which that is now current position. So we're moving to index 0 of that array. So I'm doing a vector3 operator of self, where we're getting our position every frame, and the current position, which is that index 0. And we're doing an operation of distance. So if distance is less than 1.25, we're going to go back over here and restart. Now we'll get index 1. Come over here, we'll get our position. We're now setting destination to index 1 of that array, and we're checking that same distance. And when we hit it, we go over here, we get index 2. Same thing, just repeat. Now this distance I have at 1.25. The reason I have it at 1.25 is because if I click here and I have a position stored, I want the agent to move here. When I compare distances, I'm comparing this distance that I've clicked on to this red car's transform, which on the cylinder, just in my case, is up here. And that distance is 1. So if I set it to 1 or below 1, these two distances can never get closer because they have colliders and stuff like that. And they have things that they won't get there, which is why the distance is 1.25. If this transform was sitting down here, like say, if you have a car model or whatever you're using, if the transform is down here, you could probably drop that distance check, right? So, and like I said, the collision manager just does exploding of the other car. So that's literally all he does. So if we go up here again, and let's take these two guys, because I expanded on their radiuses to make sure that I can hit them and test that. But if you have car models, that'll be a completely different thing. right? So right now it's sitting, everything's idle. So other than the raycast, we are currently raycasting wherever the mouse is, but nothing's happening because I have to click somewhere. And if I click here, as you can see, it's just firing me back, right? Because we are checking, are the cars moving? No, they aren't moving. Okay, cool. Let's go over here. Let's mouse pick. What did you click on? And I'm not clicking on anything that this thing can see. So it says, okay, well, just go back. But if I click here, it's seen the red one. As you can see that, start red and red, right? It did all the switches, so it went down the red line. Okay, so red path. Do we have a red path yet? No, it's false. So tell the car to start doing its logic of collecting the position and storing that into the array if the distance is greater, right? So we move, and as we move, it's constantly checking the position to the last position in the vector, and if the distance is greater than 0.75, then it needs to add it to the array. As it adds it to the array grows. If the array grows, it adds it to the line renderer, right? So if I let go of the mouse button, we're currently in that state 5. So I let go, it comes over and it says, okay, mouse pick. We hit nothing. So we get the tag, and it's obviously, well, it's still going to show red, but it's not the end red, so it's not equal. So tell the car to just clear. That path is garbage, go back up here. Okay, but if I click, and we do that same thing over again, but this time I go up here and I let go of the mouse button, it sees, okay, so it looks at, oh, and this time we've seen the end red, right? So let's check, is it end red? Yes, it was equal. Okay, well, let's set, we have a path as true. Tell the car to stop. Don't clear, just stop, right? We want to keep the line, but we don't want to add to the line. We don't want to clear the line, just stop. And that's it. Now, if I re-click, I can redo that logic all over again and build a whole new line. But alternatively, if I click here, we're now going up the blue line. And I can move it along, and hard to see underneath that window. All right, so let's just pause that. So same idea is I moved it. So we let go of the mouse button, it raycasted, it's seen the end blue. It said, okay, it's equal. We have a blue path now. Send the blue car to stop. Meanwhile, these two guys, the two actual AIs, right? Oh, not under the collision, under the other FSM, right? They were sitting here getting the blue path and red path and doing a bool multi-condition. Both of them are now true, so this became a past event. So it's like, yay, we have paths, we have two paths. Let's go over and take the array of vectors, which, you know, is quite large. It's not like it's a small array, but who cares? We're going to set it so that, yes, our car is moving. And then we do our get position 1, you know, do our tests and move there and just iterate through the array doing our thing. Now up here, where we have this thing, right? So now if I try to click, this guy's blocking me. He's like, no, no, the cars are moving. Don't you touch nothing. So there our cars have collided. Right? Boom, they exploded. And that's kind of where we ended video 2. Like I said, like I've already done these videos. I did 2 videos, 1 and 2, but the volume and the sound was all messed up. So this is kind of like, which is why a lot of this logic's already done. I'm just trying to walk us through it. So the next video is going to be on, okay, if they've collided, let's reset everything and try again. Or, yeah, more or less, let's reset and try again. If it completes, we need to send some sort of event saying, hey, the AI has reached the targets, life is good, and we need to move on to the next level or something. All right, so that's where we're at, and that's how we do this stuff. Anyways, in the comments, because this is a fair bit different than the other tutorials in the way that it's already built and we're just going over the logic compared to building the logic from scratch, by all means comment on the video on which method you like better, whether we're building it right from scratch or we are just going over the logic. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later.